Penguin Random House Audio presents The War of the Givens, The Silvers, Book 3, by Daniel Price. Read for you by Rich Orlow. Prologue. In the bygone days of Old New York, in the northernmost quarter of Brooklyn, there had once been a 9-acre luxury garden buried deep in the heart of a slum. It had been created in 1890 by the Assemblyman Winthrop Jones, a lifelong Brooklyn resident who'd grown dismayed by the concrete and unsightly squalor that had spread like blight across his neighborhood. He'd spent months of his life and half his own fortune carving a scenic oasis in the middle of the district, a welcome splash of nature among the endless rows of tenements. Sadly, Winthrop fell to consumption in 1891, just weeks before his park could be unveiled to the public. His dying request to the city of Brooklyn: keep it clean, keep it pure. To honor him, the mayor christened the place Winthrop Park and hired a full-time staff to maintain it. Patrolmen roamed the tree-lined paths, their eyes peeled for hoodlums, beggars, and anyone else who sought to sully the grounds with their mischief. The park was a proper place for decent folk, and damned if it wouldn't stay that way. On the 5th of October 1912, a young man hopped the iron fence at Russell Street and cut a diagonal path across the ryegrass. Though he'd never caused anyone a lick of trouble, Freedom Williams had no illusions of being welcome here. He was 17, black, and built like a wrestler, with oversized fists that hung at his sides like mallets. In the light of day, his presence would have sent every cop in the area into a state of high alert. But at 5 a.m., on a brisk and wintry Saturday, there was no one around to assume the worst about Freedom. He had all of Winthrop Park to himself. His face lit up in a bright, contented grin as he basked in the peace and quiet. He shared a 2-room flat with his mom and 4 siblings, and spent 60 hours a week on the busy floor of the ironworks. This was the only time of day when he could actually think. The fact that his shortcut shaved 5 minutes off his commute was just the icing on the cake. At 5:05, as the first hints of dawn began to creep above the tenements, a man's throaty cough yanked Freedom out of his thoughts. He looked to his left at the shelter pavilion and saw a figure crouched in shadow at the base of a pillar, just 10 feet away. Holy mercy! Freedom jumped back, his heart pounding savagely. Sorry, He took a shaky step forward, struggling to make heads or tails of the fellow. He was a bald white man of considerable size, in a tweed cap and jacket that were similar to Freedom's. A day worker from the looks of him. He might have even hauled iron at the foundry. That didn't explain what he was doing here in the cock-crow hours, with a bottle in his hand and an unstrung look about him. He's got a storm in his eyes, Freedom's father would have said. Best keep your distance. Freedom took a clumsy step back. Apologies, sir. I didn't mean to holler. I just wasn't... Zwudgy. Pardon? The stranger shook his last drops of whiskey into his mouth, then rose to his feet. At full height, he was even larger than Freedom had guessed, 6'8" and packed with muscle. The man made Freedom look like a child, and he was only getting madder. Jesteś łażejem. The giant gestured furiously at Freedom's right arm. Niech się mi se wierzyć, że kupiłeś ten zegarek za swoje pieniądze. Freedom raised his palms. Look, mister, I don't know what you're saying, but I don't want no trouble, okay? Oddaj mi zegarek, myśliwe, że cię nie krzywdzę. I'll just be on my way. Powiedziałem oddaj! The giant struck his bottle against the pillar, shattering half the glass. Though Freedom knew full well that he should be running, he couldn't help but gawk at the bottle's odd remains. Instead of sporting a crown of jagged teeth, like it did in the cartoons and picture shows, only a single fat shard extended from the neck. The thing looked more like a garden trowel than a weapon. Still sharp enough to cut you, Freedom thought. Run! He fled to the north, and the mad giant followed. Freedom hadn't been chased in a donkey's age, not since he outgrew his abusers. But the old childhood lessons remained burned in his memory. Don't look back, mind your feet, and find a way out of his sight. Unfortunately for Freedom, the park offered little in the way of cover, and it was hard to mind his feet when the sun was still a stranger. His left foot caught on a root of a tree and sent him toppling to the grass. Freedom barely had a chance to right himself before a huge hand grabbed his coat by the collar. "Wait!" Freedom pleaded. "Please!" The giant clamped the back of his neck and pulled him in close. Freedom struggled in his grip, gagging at the man's pungent stench. His clothes smelled like sweat and yesterday's garbage, with a little piss and whiskey thrown in for good measure. The giant raised his bottle blade, his eyes wet with tears. In a better state of mind, Freedom might have asked him what he was crying about. He wasn't the one who was about to get gutted. He wasn't about to leave a mom and 4 siblings with no last hope of paying the rent. And for what? Freedom had to wonder. What the hell am I dying for? He closed his eyes in cringing dread, but all he felt was release. The giant had abruptly let go of his neck and was now screaming bloody hell about something. Freedom opened his eyes just in time to catch the strangest thing he'd ever seen. His would-be killer flying backward through the air, as if gravity had gone sideways on him. The giant flailed and twisted helplessly as his body careened toward a lime tree. But then, a sudden glow silhouetted him, a 12-foot sphere of blinding white light. By the time Freedom dared to uncover his eyes, the spectacle was gone. There was no glow, no giant, just a faint and smoldering mist around the base of the tree. Freedom looked around the park in a dull, mindless stupor. What just—
"It's all right,"
said a voice from behind him.
"He's gone."
He turned around and saw a short young woman sitting idly on a bench, a platinum blonde in odd attire. She wore loose gray slacks as if she were a man, and her sleeveless blouse seemed scant for mixed company. She had no hat or coat of any kind, despite the weather. What just happened? The woman casually picked some lint off her pants leg.
"Some maladjusted lunkhead thought it was a good idea to rob you. I disagreed."
Freedom studied his savior in puzzlement, his breath still coming in gasps. This strange little pixie was 90 pounds at best. She couldn't have possibly thrown that ochre. She looked to the east at the coming dawn, then patted the slats of her bench.
"I only have a few minutes. Let's talk."
"Look, ma'am."
"Don't you dare ma'am me."
"Miss—"
"Don't do that either," she said. "You call me Ione, or you don't call me anything."
It suddenly occurred to Freedom that he was having one of those dreams his sister had read about, the kind where you know you're dreaming but keep doing it anyway. There was even a fancy name for it, though damned if Freedom could remember it. He took a deep breath, picked up his cap, then lingered near the bench in hesitation. "Begging your pardon, miss." He corrected himself in the heat of her glare. "Ione. There are folks round here who wear my hide if they see me lolling with a white woman." Ione furrowed her brow indignantly.
"I'm not white. I'm Spanish-Korean."
"You don't look it, and they won't care."
"There's no they here, Freedom. Just us. Even if there were bigots lurking about."
She flicked her hand at the misty lime tree.
"You saw what I did to Nelik."
"Who?"
"Big guy, Polish. Tried to kill you with a broken bottle."
Freedom sat on the bench, a good 4 feet from Ione. How did she know the giant's name? How did she know his name? And what did she do to that lunatic?
"I didn't kill him,"
Ione attested, as if she could read at least some of Freedom's thoughts.
"I just whisked him back to his flat on Henry Street."
"Whisked him?"
"My folksy way of saying teleported."
Freedom's stomach churned with stress. He may have dropped out of school in the middle of 8th grade, but he still knew the natural order of things. No one, not even the Spanish-Koreans, went around whisking people. Ione slumped on the bench with a look of distant gloom.
"Truth be told, I feel sorry for Nelik. He has a defect in his hypothalamus that makes it hard for him to sleep. He's never had a good night's rest in his life, and it's made him kind of—"
She wound her finger near her ear, as if that was supposed to mean something to Freedom. He did a sudden double-take at her. "Wait,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?